On February 1, 2021, security cameras at an apartment building in Canton, Massachusetts, captured Sandra Birchmore stepping outside to clear snow off her car and returning shortly after. A blizzard was rolling into Canton that night, threatening to keep everyone indoors for at least a day, if not longer. This footage of Sandra would become the last time anyone, except her alleged killer, saw the 23-year-old alive. Almost 4 hours later, a man determined not to be identified walked into her apartment building. 30 minutes later, he left. 3 days later, on February 4, 2021, the Canton Police Department responded to a welfare check request at the Canton Woods Apartments. When officers entered Sandra Birchmore's apartment, they found her in the bedroom, lying on the floor with a strap around her neck. The strap was tied to the closet door. She had likely committed suicide. Hello and welcome back. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay updated. Today, we're diving into the disturbing truth behind Sandra Birchmore's death, a case filled with shocking corruption and a police cover-up that rocked the Canton Police Department and beyond. Buckle up. This one is dark. At 11 a.m. on February 4, 2021, Patrolman Ensley Cotard arrived at the Canton Woods Apartments, responding to a welfare check request. Someone from Sharon Public Schools dialed 911, concerned about Sandra Birchmore, a 23-year-old instructional assistant who hadn't shown up for work. Sandra was not a stranger to Officer Cotard. As a teenager, she was part of the Police Explorer program, a junior academy for young people interested in law enforcement careers. After 6 years in the program, Sandra had built friendships with officers across Norfolk County. The door to Sandra's apartment was locked, and when Officer Cotard knocked, no one answered. Concerned, he reached out to the Canton Woods property manager, requesting a key. While waiting, Cotard decided to check for Sandra's car, a blue Chevy sedan. It didn't take long to find. The vehicle was parked outside the building, completely covered in snow, showing no signs of recent movement. It was clear Sandra hadn't left. With the key in hand, Officer Cotard and 2 colleagues entered Sandra's apartment. Immediately, they noticed the place was messy and unkempt. 2 house cats darted around the room as they stepped inside. Then they found Sandra in the bedroom. She was seated on the floor, her body motionless. Some sort of belt was tightly secured around her neck, the other end fastened to the closet door handle. She had been dead for some time. Her skin and face showed lividity. Rigor mortis had set in, stiffening her extremities, and a large pool of dried blood collected around her mouth. The officers reported finding nothing suspicious during their initial inspection of the apartment. They saw no signs of a struggle, no overturned furniture, no scuff marks on the walls, no drag marks on the carpet. Despite the messy state of the home, everything seemed to be in its place. So they concluded that Sandra had taken her own life.
I regret, ma'am, but I have to tell you that Sandra is deceased.
Oh my God.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
The first autopsy corroborated this conclusion. Medical examiner Martinez determined that Sandra's cause of death was asphyxia by hanging, officially ruling it a suicide. But there was one more heartbreaking detail. Sandra was 3 months pregnant at the time of her death. In the days that followed, Sandra's family began cleaning out her apartment. What they found painted a picture of a young woman whose life had been cut short while she was in the middle of living it. Wet clothes sat in the washer, and another load waited in the dryer. Unopened packages of newly purchased items were scattered around. Even more packages, ordered by Sandra just days before her death, continued to arrive at her home. But the most heartbreaking discovery was what those packages contained: a brand new baby stroller and other baby clothes and supplies. Among her belongings, friends found a glitter-covered poster that read, "Congratulations, you're going to be a father." It included an ultrasound photo. If Sandra's excitement about becoming a mother wasn't enough to raise doubts about her death, her family also found something that pointed to a struggle: a broken necklace. It was a delicate gold chain with a pink flamingo charm, one of Sandra's favorites. She was often photographed wearing it. When responders found her body, the damaged necklace was still on her, hanging off the left side of her neck, with the charm resting on her abdomen. It had snapped apart, and a clump of hair was tangled in the chain. Sandra's family reported the necklace to law enforcement, voicing their concerns about her death. However, police insisted no foul play had occurred and showed no signs of revisiting their assessment. Sandra's connection to law enforcement began in 2010 when, at just 12 years old, she joined the Police Explorers program. She stayed in the program until 2016. Robert Devine, who led the program at the time, described Sandra as obsessed with police officers. Her friends suggested her interest in law enforcement may have stemmed from a desire to find people she could trust. Sandra's childhood was marked by loss. Her mother passed away when Sandra was young. Soon after, her grandmother also died. Her father was never part of her life. In the years that followed, Sandra struggled with psychological challenges and received therapy up until her death. The adults in her life, including the officers running the Explorers program, were aware of her troubled past. Sandra lived with her aunt in Stoughton until late 2020, when she moved into her own apartment in nearby Canton. Despite her newfound independence, friends and coworkers noted that Sandra often behaved like a teenager, speaking in a childish manner and oversharing personal details. As a classroom instructional assistant, Sandra didn't seem particularly passionate about her job, but was known for being talkative with colleagues. However, she had other ambitions. She was taking classes to prepare for nursing school and was actively planning for her baby's arrival. On February 1st, the day Sandra died, she was busy making plans for her future as a mother. She had an appointment scheduled for February 10th. She contacted a photographer for newborn photos and was organizing a pregnancy announcement and gender reveal. That afternoon, she searched online for pregnancy-related information and baby products. Her last known movements were captured on camera. She entered her building while talking on the phone. Around 5 p.m., she went to the lobby to pick up a DoorDash delivery. About 45 minutes later, she stepped outside to clear snow off her car, likely preparing for the incoming blizzard. When officers arrived days later for the welfare check, they found her car buried under snow, confirming she hadn't left since the storm. As Massachusetts State Police began their investigation, they interviewed Sandra's family, friends, and coworkers. Repeatedly, they were directed to one person. The man Sandra claimed was the father of her unborn child. That man was Matthew Farwell, a 38-year-old detective with the Stoughton Police Department. Married since 2013 and a father of 3, Matthew was an instructor with the Police Explorers program since joining the department in 2012. He met Sandra when she was just 14 years old. The details of Sandra's death and her relationship with Matthew Farwell raised troubling questions that would soon draw national attention and scrutiny. Matthew Farwell admitted to investigators that he had reconnected with Sandra several months before her death. After a night of heavy drinking, he confessed they had been intimate and met a few more times afterward. However, he denied being the father of Sandra's child, claiming the timing didn't align. He had been distancing himself from her and ended their relationship during a nasty argument at her apartment on the evening of February 1st. According to him, Sandra was upset but alive when he left. The detective's story may have convinced his fellow officers, who probably wanted to believe him. But for anyone who knew Sandra, his claims didn't add up. She wasn't the type to keep secrets. If anything, she shared too much, sometimes even with people she barely knew. Her family and coworkers found it uncomfortable. Sandra spent countless summers at her cousin's house. There was a pool in the backyard. She was sharp, witty, one of the smartest people they knew. Over time, Sandra let something slip. She was having a relationship with her instructor. The family wasn't happy about it.
Years goes by, it slips out that she may or may not be having a relationship with one of the instructors. Family members are a little upset about it.
We just all knew he was the father. She's talked about him for years.
According to her cousin, Sandra's latest pregnancy wasn't her first. She once had a miscarriage. The father was a police officer. Sandra was heartbroken over the loss, So when she got pregnant again, she was overjoyed. That's why many couldn't believe she would have taken her own life. Detective Matthew Farwell's confession about his relationship with Sandra triggered an internal investigation at the Stoughton Police Department. Officials wanted the full truth about what had happened during her years in the Police Explorers program. What they found was disturbing. The findings were made public that September.
What I'm about to brief you on is something deeply troubling to me as a human being and as a police chief. Miss Birchmore was a vulnerable person who had one constant in her life since childhood: her unwavering admiration of police officers, of those serving the military, people in uniform, people with oaths and duties to protect and serve. The admiration led her to form relationships with men who were willing to take advantage of her. What I am here to talk about today is her life and how she was failed by, manipulated by, and used by people of authority that she admired and trusted right up until her final days.
3 Stoughton officers, Detective Matthew Farwell, his twin brother Officer William Farwell, and former Deputy Chief Robert Devine, were all found to have played a role in grooming and exploiting Sandra. Investigators uncovered a horrifying truth. Matthew Farwell's relationship with Sandra started when she was just 15. He was 27. The legal age of consent in Massachusetts is 16. At the time of her death, Sandra was still involved with both William Farwell and Robert Devine. The investigation revealed that William even tried to introduce her to other men. Another officer, Josh Heel, from the Abington Police Department, was also implicated. This wasn't Robert Devine's first scandal. In 2014, explicit photos of him with a mistress were leaked to the department and their spouses. He was demoted to patrol officer, but surprisingly allowed to stay on the force. Following the investigation, all 3 Stoughton officers, the Farwell brothers and Devine, resigned. Officials ensured they would never work in law enforcement again. Evidence from the grooming case was damning, enough to spark outrage from both the public and the police chief. Yet despite multiple witnesses willing to speak out, the county declined to press charges. The district attorney claimed the case was too weak to pursue. The investigation revealed that someone had tried to sound the alarm about Matthew Farwell months before Sandra's death. In January 2021, Sandra borrowed money from a friend but couldn't pay it back on time. That friend called the Stoughton Police Department, reporting their dispute and demanding Matthew Farwell to get the money back because he was having a sexual relationship with Sandra. Instead of treating this as a serious report, police just kept quiet. After Sandra died, another friend came forward, directly implicating Matthew Farwell in possible foul play. But by then, it was too late. These men knew exactly what they were doing. Sandra was young, vulnerable, and searching for love. She didn't have a father figure in her life, so they stepped into that role, only to exploit her. They groomed her, manipulated her, and took advantage of her trust. When the Internal Affairs report became public, it sent shockwaves through Canton and neighboring Stoughton, towns only a few miles apart. But as the horrifying details emerged, so did a more unsettling reality. Police corruption ran deep in Norfolk County. How had Sandra been involved with multiple officers for years without anyone stepping in? How could this have remained an open secret, whispered about across departments, possibly even county-wide? This is law enforcement, the people meant to protect and serve. Yet, instead of keeping Sandra safe, they preyed on her.
What the hell is going on? Who is in charge there? And if anybody's in charge there, is he or she being held accountable?
The police, unfortunately, now that it's showing how corrupt some of our legal systems are, I think the police need to be held responsible.
There's a bad element that has been allowed to happen, and there's been cover-ups, and it shakes the trust of people.
There were signs that the corruption in law enforcement extended far beyond Sandra's case. Almost exactly a year after her tragic death, another disturbing incident rocked the community. Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found dead in the snow after an argument with his girlfriend, Karen Red. She was arrested and charged with his murder, but outside the courtroom, protests erupted. Crowds insisted that police had framed Karen Red and were covering for the real killer. This case gained massive media attention, drawing scrutiny not just from Boston, but from across the country. It also fueled countless conspiracy theories. And it wasn't long before troubling connections between Sandra's case and O'Keefe's began to emerge. The same Norfolk County District Attorney's Office handled both cases. Some of the same officers worked on both investigations, 2 from Canton PD and 3 from the state police, including a detective from each force. And in both cases, they reached the same conclusion: no homicide. That ruling didn't sit well with Sandra's loved ones. Her family was adamant. She had been thrilled to become a mother. Friends came forward, recalling how she had confided in them about Detective Matthew Farwell's reaction to the pregnancy. She had told him she expected $4,000 a month in child support, plus an additional $33,000 for daycare. They fought over it. He denied being the father. And at one point, she claimed he told her, "I just wish you would die." State police documented this information but never followed up on it. While evidence that could have pointed to foul play was brushed aside, Matthew Farwell himself openly complained about being investigated. He vented to a colleague, frustrated that the Massachusetts State Police hadn't dismissed the allegations against him immediately. In March 2021, State Trooper Nick Guarino, who also worked on the Karen Reed case, was assigned to extract data from Farwell's personal and work cell phones, but his handling of evidence later came under scrutiny. Defense attorneys in the Karen Reed case accused him of failing to retrieve key data.
That extraction you placed on the server did not include all the potential data on John O'Keefe's phone, did it?
How do you mean?
Well, didn't you indicate in your report that the extraction was not inclusive of all potential data contained within the device?
No, that's not true.
It was clear something was missing. In August, after months of examining Farwell's devices, State Trooper Guarino claimed he couldn't find a single text message between Matthew and Sandra. That might have been the end of it, except for one thing. A federal expert brought in for the internal affairs investigation later uncovered more than 32,000 text messages exchanged between Matthew and Sandra in the year before her death. Even with this revelation, the county refused to press charges. But Sandra's family wasn't giving up. In late 2022, they filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the town of Stoughton. The civil case accused the department of negligence, pain and suffering, emotional distress, and ultimately a years-long grooming scheme carried out by 3 law enforcement officers, one that ended with Sandra's death. They didn't have to prove it was homicide. They only had to prove that these men were responsible for why Sandra wasn't alive today. But that didn't mean they accepted the medical examiner's ruling. Far from it. They sought a second opinion from Dr. Michael Baden, a highly respected forensic pathologist. After reviewing the original autopsy, Dr. Baden noted that Sandra had suffered a fracture to a small U-shaped bone in the neck, known as the hyoid bone, which fractures rarely, if at all, in suicidal hanging, but does in half of homicidal strangulation of women. Therefore, Dr. Baden concluded that Ms. Birchmore did not die of suicidal hanging. The cause of Ms. Birchmore's death is strangulation, and the manner of death is homicide. Unlike the local and state police, the FBI took this seriously. They reopened the case and brought in 2 additional medical examiners to independently review the same autopsy photos and reports. Both doctors confirmed what Dr. Baden had found. Sandra had been attacked, there had been a struggle, and she had been killed. Had investigators properly examined Sandra's messages with Detective Matthew Farwell, they would have discovered that everything changed on December 28, 2020, the day she told him she was pregnant. Sandra's relationship with Matthew had lasted nearly 8 years, beginning when she was just a vulnerable teenager looking up to a man in uniform. Through their messages, a disturbing pattern emerged. One where Farwell, now in his late 30s, controlled and manipulated her. By October 2020, Sandra had reached a breaking point. She drafted a text intended for Matthew's wife and sent it to a friend for advice. "I am just messaging to inform you that your husband Matthew has been out cheating on you since before you guys were even married." That friend responded with shocking news. Matthew's wife was pregnant with their third child, due in February. That same day, Sandra began trying to conceive with Matthew, timing their encounters around her cycle. She had decided she wanted a baby, and he had agreed. But 2 months later, when she finally told him she was pregnant, his reaction turned hostile. Sandra confronted him through messages. "I'm mad you're acting how you are over a choice we both made." Matthew snapped back. "I'm mad you act like you gave anyone a choice." Sandra laughed. LMAO. "Oh, so you didn't have a choice?" Matthew said, "Per usual, you make and do whatever you want." Then Sandra accused him of not knowing how he would juggle 2 pregnancies at once, his wife due in February, and her in September. His response was cold and cruel. "You are truly the worst person on the face of the earth." Matthew's anger exploded after Sandra's friend called the Stoughton Police Department and casually mentioned their relationship to another officer. Furious, Matthew texted Sandra, "Like you have no idea how bad what she did is. I literally can't believe this is even real life. Like, what else do I have to worry about now? Which other friend will do something tomorrow?" But Sandra's friends already knew his rage wasn't just in words. 3 of them told investigators that Matthew had grown physically violent when she tried to discuss the pregnancy. Sandra was 4 feet 10 inches tall, Matthew was 6 feet 4. The power imbalance was staggering. One of the last times they saw each other, Sandra showed him a sonogram. His response was, "That's not my child. I don't want anything really to do with you." Then, according to Sandra's friends, he shoved her to the ground. Despite the escalating tension, something odd happened 1 week before her death. Matthew's attitude suddenly changed. His messages became calm, supportive. He said they could talk about putting his name on the birth certificate. He reminded her of an offer she had made months earlier, giving him a spare key to her apartment. At the time, he had declined, saying it was a bad idea. But now, in the last week of January, he changed his mind. Matthew had a key. Then he asked for something else. "What's the passcode to your building? Is it the same code for all residents, or just for you?" Just days before her death, on January 24th, Sandra texted a friend about Matthew's visit that night. "He asked me if I'd give him a key and said that if I keep it, the baby is secret. He'll be around and see them and all that. So it's somewhere. Then he looked in my closet and then the bathroom, but I don't know why. Haven't figured that out." She sent another message to a different friend. "Last night, he opened my closet door for something. Then he went into my bathroom, looking at my bathroom. It was just really odd. He started looking around. I don't know." On the evening of January 29th, Sandra was caught on surveillance footage at 5:01 p.m., first accepting a DoorDash order, then briefly stepping outside to grab a snow brush before going back inside. The security cameras were later found to be 13 minutes off from real time. The last time Sandra was seen alive on video was at 5:33 p.m. Then, just after 9 p.m., Matthew Farwell sent her a text, "Can I come by for a second?" Surveillance footage captured Matthew entering the Canton apartment building at 9:14 p.m. He wasn't wearing his police uniform. Instead, he showed up in street clothes, a hoodie with the hood up, and a face mask. This was unusual. Multiple witnesses told FBI investigators that Matthew rarely wore a mask, even during the pandemic, except when required by department policy. At 9:43 p.m., he left Sandra's apartment. When later questioned, he claimed that this was when he ended their brief affair, and Sandra was alive when he left. Health data from Sandra's iPhone showed that her last recorded movement happened at 9:40 p.m., just 3 minutes before Matthew left. She had moved 8 steps. When authorities later found the phone, it was lying 12 feet away from her right hand. It remained powered on until its battery died 2 days later, on February 3rd. On August 28, 2024, federal authorities arrested Matthew Farwell and indicted him on one count of killing a witness or victim, a charge often used in organized crime cases. By charging him federally, the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI were able to retain control over the case, keeping it out of the hands of local and state officials, who were widely accused of mishandling the investigation. Prosecutors argued that Matthew killed Sandra to silence her. He chose his moment carefully. His wife had gone into labor, meaning she would be occupied at the hospital. A storm was incoming, which would delay the discovery of Sandra's body, and in the days before, he had carefully scoped out her apartment. Matthew Farwell was a trained detective, an expert in crime scenes and evidence. He staged the murder to look like a suicide, then relied on police loyalty to shield him from suspicion. But no one could protect him now. Since his arrest in August 2024, Matthew remains in federal custody. His twin brother William was also involved with Sandra, but never charged with her death. Instead, he lost his badge for illegally searching his and Matthew's names in the police database. As for Robert Devine, the former police official who also exploited Sandra, he resigned quietly in 2022. Matthew has not been given a trial date yet, but with the mountain of evidence against him, it wouldn't be surprising if he takes a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. But this isn't just about one or two dirty cops. In early 2024, an investigation by the Marshall Project exposed a long history of sexual abuse and misconduct within law enforcement explorer programs. The findings revealed a disturbing trend. Many officers accused of misconduct were never prosecuted. Among those who were convicted, only about half received any jail time, with sentences ranging from a few weekends in jail to years behind bars. Documents from the Stoughton Police Department painted a picture of a program with little oversight. In response to public outrage, the department has since shut it down. Meanwhile, the Karen Reed case continued to divide the community. Her first trial ended in a hung jury. Her defense team claimed that she was framed by a network of corrupt officers, the same system that had protected Matthew Farwell. The outcry led to a public vote demanding a full audit of the Canton Police Department. At protests, people held signs reading, "Free Karen Reed, Justice for Sandra Birchmore." Sandra Birchmore was a young, vulnerable woman who believed in law enforcement. She idolized them, she trusted them, and they used her. When she became inconvenient, they got rid of her. She didn't deserve this, and while the men who exploited her might have gotten away with it for years, they aren't getting away with it anymore. The system that once protected them is finally turning against them. Because people are paying attention and justice is coming. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Please share your thoughts in the comments. If there's a case you're interested in, let us know. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.